people that were here had access to the same information that you did, you didn't know here. As in, there was an email that had the schedule for the whole semester. So, and then there was an announcement on Blackboard. And I'm saying that because when we talk about being professional, part of that, what we mean by that is just organizing yourself to be able to do the things that you expect you to do. You won't be able in your job after college to say, I didn't think that meeting applied to me, or you didn't remind me, or something like that. It's just, you need to organize yourself to attend to these things, and so watch those announcements and things, put things in your calendar. It's all part of becoming a credible, creative Christian professional. So having already said half the mission statement, I do have for a freshman who can recite the entire first sentence of the mission statement, a back. Got a freshman that can tell me the first sentence of the mission statement? That's a good one. Well, it's a cool bag too. You know, pockets and stuff like that.
Well, isn't it written on the outside of the bag too, the mission statement?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, not the sentence.
We can hold that up. That one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've already said credible, creative professional. This is part of it.
Well, it's a great bag.
How about a sophomore that can say it? First sentence. Our mission is junior, senior. I really like this bag. I'm glad I'm going to keep it. All right. Well, we didn't want you to be reflective about that. Our mission is prepare credible, creative Christian professionals for a world with a mastery of communication skills and technologies. It's essential. That's the first sentence. And we just want to keep reminding you that that's where we're trying to go. So we talk about being professional, and we talk about, how about this? I'll give this bag to someone who can roughly state one of the 4 dispositions that relate to being Christian. You know, we have a little outline, and there's 4 things on each of the bullet points. What are the things that we say? How is it that we have operationally defined, when we use that term, Christian intervision? Do you know one of them? Well, roughly the 4 are, no, I'm on the spot. Part of it is recognizing the communications gift we have. The second one is about the fact that God is a gift, we need to act as stewards of that gift. One of them is about being aware of others as carriers of God's grace, sensitive, thoughtful about our audience. Christians, we do that, and then the fourth one. But anyway, I would encourage you to review those, think about those. We want you to understand at some level where we're trying to get you, and we want you at some level to agree to go there. There you go. So, I think I will give the bag to Dr. Woods, because he has a new book. Anybody writes a whole book, it's get the bag, right? Prophetic critique in popular media. He told me not to announce this. He was just giving it to me to see, but I think it's good to celebrate the accomplishments of people in our organization, in our team, this is a edited project with lots of interesting information and essays. I wouldn't call them essays, but it certainly has had a lot of time. You might want to pick that. Come right here and pick it up and look at it for a minute, and then go out and buy one. Our speaker today is actually John Voelz, who's on the pastoral staff of Westlands. He describes himself as 5'9", 3 kids, 1 wife, Jesus lover, tamed rebel, bit of Catholic envy, artist, songwriter, painter, musician, pastor, aggravator. That's what we have coming. And one of the lead pastors at Westlands. Westlands has a national reputation for being involved in social media because all the hipsters and jazz go there. But
Of course. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you.
But I think that they we're in which newspaper covered the fact that you use the Twitter and service? Sunday Times?
A few of them. Time was the big one, yeah.
Time Magazine.
Time Magazine, yeah.
Time Magazine noted that they actually were using Twitter in their services, and people were commenting on the sermon on Twitter, showing up on the screen. So, kind of cool stuff. They've done a lot of innovative things, and we're excited to have him here to talk. His book is Follow You, Follow Me, Why Social Networking is Essential in Ministry.
Right. Let's do this. Everybody got a good spanking when they came in here today because they weren't at the last ComCon. And by the way, do I get brownie points because I'm not even a student, I was there? Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I think that
Oh, good. Okay, I'm in. So why don't we do this? Why don't we stand? Why don't we stretch? Why don't you tell somebody next to you one thing that you really love about them? Go ahead. Just gonna, we're gonna do. Go ahead. Go ahead. The way they're excited. All right, now you can have a seat.
I like how much you kill your bag.
I was going to say the same thing.
You know, we just all feel better about ourselves now. Well, like Molly said, my interest in social networking, social media, really was heightened when Time Magazine actually did call us and ask. They said something that was very flattering and something I didn't actually believe, but I went with it anyway because it was fun to be in Time Magazine. They said that we had done a search around the internet to try to find out if churches were involved in social networking at all. And the thing that keeps coming up is Westwind's Church and your name and your blog posts and interaction that people are having with you on the internet. And so it looks like you're the expert. I didn't feel like an expert at that time. And I still don't feel like an expert, but I feel like I know a lot more maybe than the average person does about social networking, just because of taking it by the reins and being involved with it and looking at it as not a ministry tool, not a tool in a way that we take something and we get something done, or we try to control it, or we try to use it, but a ministry tool in the way that we understand social networking at Westwinds as an opportunity. We look at it as an opportunity to converse, be in relationship with people, and more than that, we understand social networking as a new language. It's an entirely new language that we are all trying to learn. And nobody, as of yet, except maybe Dr. Woods, has written anything that is a completely well-rounded theory of how to work, how to react, how to interact with one another in social networking platforms from a ministry perspective. We're still trying to figure it out. It's all relatively new. Now, I am a father. I have 3 kids. My oldest daughter has 2 kids, so I'm a poppy. All right. Now, my grandkids are growing up in an entirely different world than their mother grew up in with social networking. My youngest 2 children, they grew up with social networking. They understand it. My youngest daughter, she's 13. She still lives in the home. She Facebooks me from her bedroom when she wants to get my attention, right? She wasn't feeling well last week. She was her bedroom is down in the basement, and she was Facebooking me. I'd get these little things pop up on my phone. Daddy, are you there? You know, and I go downstairs, what do you need? Take care of her. It got old after a while, by the way, just getting those Facebook posts over and over and over. But she's grown up in that world. My oldest daughter, she didn't grow up in that world, but she's having to live in that world right now. And it's such a blessing for me as a poppy, with my 2 granddaughters now living on the East Coast for the next couple of years before they come back to Jackson. They are growing up in a world where they get to talk with me every day if they want. I had a conversation with Clara, my 2-year-old granddaughter, the other day on iChat, and she read me the Bible. She had a little children's Bible. She was reading it to me, and I told her, I said, "Oh, Clara, I wish I could be there with you so bad." And she said, "Well, Poppy, I'll just yo gabba gabba." And I didn't know what that meant. I have seen the show, but she put her hands together and she said, "Yo gabba gabba." And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "There's Poppy. Poppy's in the room." I mean, it's a different world for her, and it's a blessing. It's fun to be part of. So Westwinds has made it kind of our, we've really taken it to heart, social networking, and we've said, how can we give people the tools to live in this world, to communicate well in this world? Now, there's a lot of bad communication happening in social networking platforms. And the church, honestly, is doing a horrible job for the most part. Either they embrace it and they look at it as an evangelistic tool that's more of like a flip chart presentation kind of evangelism kind of a tool, like I'm going to lead people to Jesus in 140 characters or less. So they either look at it like that, or they look at it as, you know, just being persuasive as they can, so they make it their soapbox, or they beat one another up, or they try to do conflict resolution in social networking. And we need rules for that kind of communication. We need a well-rounded theory for how to be able to communicate in those situations. And the church has a long history of either taking things and making them their own and trying to control things, or keeping them at bay and villainizing them, vilifying them, and making them the evil thing that we're all going to point the finger at and say we should have nothing to do with it. And there's two major reasons that the church looks at new ways of communicating like that. And these reasons are this: fear and tradition. We've always done it this way, so it's hard to learn this new way, or maybe we don't trust this new way, or maybe we heard something bad about this way, and so we're going to jump to conclusions and vilify it, or we just don't understand it, and so we're going to do all of the same kinds of things. It's a scary world. When Westwind started using Twitter, I'm an early adopter. In all fairness, I love new things. Like when there's new ways of communicating, when there's new music, when there's new technology, I embrace it right away. I try to learn everything I possibly can about it. I'm just wired that way. So when we got on the Twitter bandwagon, nobody was even using that word. Nobody knew what Twitter was. And so we had an idea. We said, you know what would be good is to take Twitter, get our entire church, or as many of them as we can, involved in Twitter, get them a Twitter account. After church, on a few Sundays in a row, we could have Twitter classes. We could teach them how to set up their account. We could teach them how to communicate in this new platform. And then we'll bring it into the worship service, because we've created an environment at Westwinds where we have the freedom to try new things on, and new ways of communicating, new ways of interacting in the worship service. And we said, we don't know how this is going to go. It's going to be a little experiment for us, but let's get everybody on board. Let's put it up. We had 5 screens at that time, and we were meeting in the round. So the band was in the middle, everybody was surrounding us, 5 screens surrounding the auditorium, and we put a Twitter feed up, and we just said, we just want you to interact. You can ask questions, you can say nice things, you can try to set an appointment with somebody afterwards to talk more in depth about this. You can, whatever it is, we're going to watch the Twitter feed, we're going to see if we can interact with it. Okay, so sometimes we'd get, funny little things come up on the screen, like, hey, J-Bo, nice shirt, or just things that it seems like they don't make any sense at all. And so a lot of people from the outside looked at that and said, well, this is ridiculous. I remember a man that I love, a man that has deeply influenced me, and one of the first Christian books I ever read was by him, Mr. John Piper. He wrote a book when I was young. I read it. It's called Desiring God, Meditations of a Christian Hedonist. And I idolized him. I thought he was so great that he gave me freedom to try new things for size. And Mr. Piper just destroyed me on the internet. Just destroyed me, what we were doing with Twitter. He said, how could you bring this into a worship service, that the smell of perfume in the room is enough to distract somebody from listening to the Word of God. Somebody scratching their ear, a little conversation. How could you have people bring devices into a room and interact with one another when the main thing that should be happening in that space is that people should be listening to the Word of God coming out of the mouth of that preacher? Well, I appreciate where he was coming from, but I totally disagree. And I told him that, and I told him that he hurt my feelings. and I told him that I really enjoyed his book, and it was some of the things he said early on in my life that gave me the freedom to try some of these things on for size. And I had conversations with him after that were just wonderful, and he didn't want to come across that way. But here's the thing. The apex of what happens on the weekend for this, and I'm going to move past this Twitter thing. This is just kind of the setup for what we're going to talk about this. We don't believe that on the weekend the apex is the message, the 30-minute message. We believe that the apex of the weekend is meeting with God, right? It's moving a step closer towards God. It's being able to hear from God. It's being able to strengthen our listening skills. And many people many people learn in different ways. And so for us at Westwinds, part of this Twitter communication experiment was to see, can we pull new people into this? Can we meet new people? Are there people out there that we don't even know exist? And the fact is, there were a ton of them. There were a lot of people that we didn't know. There was Erin, who had 5 miscarriages, and nobody really knew her. And she wanted so desperately to have a baby. And she got hooked up with Twitter, and she started meeting people through the church, and she started asking questions, and we learned more about her story, and we asked if we could get her story on videotape, and we took that video of her, that film, and we retweeted it, and we put it on Facebook platforms, and we connected her with other people. And if you talk to Erin today, who now has a baby boy named Jonah, if you talk to her about how she got connected at Westwinds Church, she will tell you that Twitter played a huge part in that. Sure, some guy just put some crazy thing up on the screen that said nice shirt, and it didn't mean anything, but for her, it meant a lot. For her, it meant that she could be part of a greater, bigger conversation, and she didn't know how to enter into that conversation. And so we were inviting her into something, and it meant a lot. There was Norma, who used to work for us. Norma worked at Westwinds for 175 years, and just a sweet, sweet lady. Becky White could attest to this, kind of a mom to us, right, Becky? We love Norma. Well, when we tried to get her involved in social networking, she freaked out. There's no way I'm going to do this. You can't make me do this. I could make her do this, but I didn't want to pull that card. I said, Norma, come on, why don't you want to be part of this? Well, I don't want to get involved in this. Everybody's going to know everything about me. No, they're not going to know everything about you. They're only going to know what you tell them. That's not what I've heard. Well, what have you heard? Well, I'm afraid that if I get involved with this twizzle thing, that I think that's what she called it. She said, I'm afraid if I get involved, people are going to have access to my bank accounts. I go, what are you talking about? Like, how do you get from set up a Twitter account or a Facebook account to people are going to have access to my money? Like, I don't know how that connects for you. Now, Norma's not stupid. Norma's a pretty hip lady. She is willing to try on a whole bunch of different things, but she feared it because she didn't understand it. And what I had to help Norma to understand is that there are 100,000 NASCAR fans that invade this town every time there's a race, and there's a greater fear that they're going to get into her house and see what's going on in her bank account than somebody trying to find out private information about her just for opening a Twitter account. And by the way, there's already information that exists on the internet, whether you have a Twitter account or a Facebook account or not, and people can and do get a hold of that information. And so we just have to learn how to best live with this fear. I want to show you this video here. because this one kind of reminded me of Norma. And this is wonderful. Let's see if we can get this. I don't fear this technology, by the way. I just don't know how to work it. Okay.
I think it
Looks like maybe.
It's on.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll show that maybe later. How about that? Yeah, it's not super important. You can search for it out on the web. There is a fear of robots video that I kind of wanted to show you just because I thought it was funny. Oh, there we go.
Press computer 2.
You want to help, Dory?
I think it is.
On remote.
Is that what it is?
We set it up, it just went to sleep.
On remote.
Went to sleepy. All right, boom, here we go.
When Diane's husband passed away, the insurance company said his policy didn't cover them. They had no money to pay for the funeral. It's so hard nowadays with all the gangs and rap music. What about robots? Oh, they're everywhere. I don't even know why the scientists make them. Darren and I have a policy with Old Glory Insurance that covers us in case we're attacked by robots. An insurance policy with a robot plan? Mm-hmm. Certainly I'm too old. Old Glory covers anyone over the age of 50 against robot attack, regardless of current health.
I'm Sam Waterston of the popular TV series Law and Order. As a senior citizen, you're probably aware of the threat robots pose. Robots are everywhere, and they eat old people's medicine for fuel. Well, now there's a company that offers coverage against the unfortunate event of a robot attack. Old Glory Insurance. Old Glory will cover you with no health checkup or age consideration. You need to feel safe. And that's harder and harder to do nowadays. Robots can strike at any time. And when they grab you with those metal claws, you can't break free because they're made of metal. And robots are strong. Now, for only $4 a month, you can achieve peace of mind in a world full of crime and robots with Old Glory Insurance. So don't cower under your Afghan any longer. Make your choice. Old Glory Insurance. For when the metal ones decide to come for you. And they will.
Wow. So obviously, the media likes to play on the fears, like we saw portrayed there. I think Conan O'Brien recently said that honestly, fear of robots is one of the #1 fear of old people. But look, it's fear of social networking, what happens out there, fear of the internet, fear of new technology, of new ways of communicating. It's not an old person's thing. We need to understand it. That's what it is, and we fear what we don't understand. So I like to think of social networking and social media with some metaphors that help me kind of categorize what my role is as a pastor and as a Christian, frankly. And here's some metaphors for us to try and emphasize. I think that social networking is much like the provincial life. Beauty and the Beast, any fans? It's my favorite Disney movie. I love it. It's just great. So how's it start out? What's Belle doing? What are the things happening there? She's singing. She's reading. She's walking through the town. How are they interacting with her? Bonjour, bonjour. Anybody want to sing it? That'd be great. I don't want to sing it. Yeah, she's talking to the butcher, and she's talking to the baker, and what are some characters? Who are the characters in there that are not favorable characters in the beginning? Gaston. He's kind of a jackass, honestly. I mean, like nobody really likes Gaston, right? Yeah. So Gaston is the guy who's always trying to draw attention to himself. He kind of reminds me of like the modern day street preacher who stands with a sign and tries to have everybody just look at him and draw attention to himself. I think social networking in many ways is like the provincial life. It's a gathering place. It's a place where everybody is doing business together. It's a place where everybody is swapping stories together, and it's a place where we meet Gastons. They just live there, but it's the place place that we do life. Okay, so the provincial life. I think social networking is a lot like the church lobby. What happens in a church lobby?
Interaction.
What kind of interaction?
Strangers meeting strangers.
Strangers meeting strangers. Great. Anything else? What other kind of interaction in the church lobby?
Break the ice a little about everyday life. Like, hey, how are you doing?
Okay, so it's like an
What's wrong
icebreaker
with you?
kind of thing. Good, 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 good. Do we have deep relationships in the church lobby? Does that make the church lobby bad?
No.
No, because we understand it for what it is, right? We get tidbits of information, we touch base with people, we move on. Maybe we set an appointment with somebody after, maybe we say, meet me after church, we're gonna go to lunch. But one of the things that the church likes to do is we talked about vilify, they like to vilify social networking and say, well, there's no real deep relationships that happen in social networking, therefore it's bad. And that's not a good connection to make, especially if we understand it in light of what happens in a church lobby. It's also, here's another metaphor, it's a prayer chain. How do prayer chains work? Does anybody pray in here? How does a prayer chain work?
Some of them you get an email with like a bunch of prayer requests on it, and you pray for them.
Okay, so you get emails, you get communication, you find out what's going on, you can pray for people, and the end result really of a prayer chain is, maybe that person needs healing, or maybe we meet real needs. Like we find out what's happening with people and we can actually go meet their needs. When I was a kid, my dad was out of work a lot. He was in painting construction, and I remember taking a prayer request for my dad to get work to a prayer chain and coming home, and our home was full of groceries. I opened the door and it was just full of groceries, and I saw my mom in the corner. I can still see her like yesterday, sitting in the corner crying. And I said, Mom, what's the matter? And she said, what did you tell these people? And she was embarrassed, because, every parent wants to provide for their kids. And I remember being a young boy and said, Mom, don't be embarrassed. This is what we do. We take care of each other. This is what the church does. I think social networking is like a prayer chain. We get to learn things about one another. We get to take care of one another. So provincial life, church lobby, prayer chain. I also think of social networking as a passing period. So what happens in between classes?
We check our phones.
You check your phone. That's good. Why?
This is being honest.
Why do you check your phone?
You check them in class and
Yeah. Just to see what's new, what's going on.
See what's new, see what's going on. I remember running into people every once in a while, like in high school, you'd see like a girl crying at her locker, during the passing period, and you go up to her, I'd go up to her and talk to her and say, totally not interested in girls at all and trying to hook up or anything like that. But you'd have those conversations where, you want to find out what's wrong with somebody, but you don't have much time. You don't have much time to figure that out. It's the communication that happens on the way to something else, right? So I think these are helpful metaphors for us to understand just what we're dealing with so we don't vilify it. Now, 100 years ago, the way that we got our information, the way that we learned about how to meet needs, the way that we learned what was going on in somebody's life, the way that we got our information was through newspapers and through pamphlets and through word of mouth 100 years ago. The internet, of course it didn't exist, my goodness. And televisions weren't in everybody's home 100 years ago. As a matter of fact, in 1917, if you owned a radio, did you know that the federal government seized control of all radio communication in 1917 because of World War I and our involvement, and the government would not allow radio broadcasts. So you couldn't even get information in 1917 from the radio unless you got it illegally because the government was in control. Well, things are a lot different now. When I grew up, just a few short years ago, I lived on 10 acres out in the country, out in the middle of nowhere, on a dirt road, 2 miles in from the highway. I had a motorcycle. I used to go ride my motorcycle all day long. My mom would just let me go, go, go. We'd be on other people's property. We'd be taking inner tubes and floating down the river. There was no cell phone communication with my mom. She didn't even know where in the heck we were, but the world kind of felt safe. Right now, I'm sure my mom had fears. I'm sure my mom hoped that we would be okay. But the world just felt different then. Is the world any less safe today, in all honesty, than it was when I was a kid and my mom felt safe?
No.
No. It's still unsafe. Kids back then were getting kidnapped. There were murders. Countries were invading one another. People were being sold into slavery. Women were being taken advantage of. It's the same world. Now, I'm not saying that social networking doesn't present some risks that we need to take care of. But what I am saying is that it's not any less safe of a world. People still do bad things. Bad people still exist. We need to find out ways to communicate in this new world that we live in. So how did we get here? Why does Norma think people are going to steal her money? Why do people think that robots are going to attack them? Why do we vilify social networking? Why has it become a place for the church where bad things happen? Why do we not want our kids talking on social networking? What are some of the things that happen? What do we hear about? Stalkers. Right. Do stalkers exist without social networking?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Same inherent risks as when you go to the mall. You don't know who's following you. You don't know who's watching you get in your car. You don't. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just saying that those. Right? Everybody's gonna be walking like this all day long. The risks are out there, so we need to protect ourselves. But it's not really more of an unsafe world. So how did we get here? Why so much fear?
Because it's something new. Like the old generation isn't used to
Yeah.
what is developing and coming.
Because it's something. It is something new, and. What are some of the ways that fears get elevated with something new?
Change.
Okay, change. How does the media handle this fear? The mainstream media.
Yeah.
What's that?
They exploit it.
They exploit it. How?
They hype it.
They hype it.
If there's something bad that happens, that's what gets all the attention.
That's such a good point. Something bad happens, it gets all the attention. Because that's how mainstream media works. They want to capitalize on that. When I was a kid, there was a song by a guy named Don Henley who was in a band called the Eagles. You should check them out, really good band. He had this song called Dirty Laundry, and he talked about the bubble-headed bleach blonde who came on at 5, and she could tell you about the plane crash with a gleam in her eye. It's interesting when people die. We need dirty laundry. This was a lyric in the song. Because we love bad news. So, a Nickelodeon or a Disney star, has a intentional wardrobe malfunction on Twitter or Facebook, and we all hear about it, and the mainstream media takes that, and they make a direct correlation and a direct connection for us in our minds that it is bad for teens to be on the internet. Why? Because there's naked teens on the internet. Why? Because this one girl did that, and it's disproportionate. And it's not really true. Miley Cyrus is way different than my daughter. The risks are different. But the media doesn't give us a counterbalance or a counterweight to those fears. They don't tell the good stories. So what would happen if the church looked at social media as a celebration of redemption stories. What if this was our job? Was to tell good stories. Like the story I told you about Aaron. What would happen? There's good stories out there, social networking. 2011, tsunami hits Japan. Ann Curry works for the Today Show. She has a Twitter account. This woman has a sister who is working in a school in Japan, and she, on a whim, decides she's going to send a tweet to Ann Curry and say, "I'm trying to find my sister. Nobody has communication with her. If you're over there and you happen to end up at this one school, can you see if you can find my sister?" Ann Curry says, "I'll give it a shot, but I can't. There's no promises." How we live in a world where we have access to an Ann Curry at the Today Show, who is over reporting in Japan. The end of the story is Ann Curry goes into that school, finds the sister, gives her her cell phone. The sister calls home and says, "I'm okay." That's a good story. But we don't really hear those stories. 2011, there was a project called Unheard Of in New York, where somebody had a great idea to get cell phones into the hands of homeless people who could not afford to have a cell phone. They taught the homeless how to set up social networking accounts so they could communicate with the world around them. They could tell their stories and maybe get connected to people that could help them. A guy named Daniel, 58 years old, sets up a Twitter account, starts telling his story. Hasn't seen his daughter in 11 years. She connects with him on Twitter. They reunite. Did you hear that story? Did you know about that story? Probably not, because it was a little footnote in the mainstream media. We don't hear the good stories in social media. I went to Lollapalooza a couple of years ago, and outside of Lollapalooza, there was a group of people with picket signs and megaphones. And there was a group of women that were standing, huddled, heads covered, all wearing the same dress underneath a tree. And there was a guy yelling with his megaphone at every kid that came through there. "Hey, little whore, what are you wearing there? I bet your daddy's really proud of you. Oh, so you're going in to party with all your friends, right? Well, there's no party in hell, little boy." This is the stuff they're saying, right? I'm heartbroken. And this stuff just, I can feel my heart beating in my neck. I want to go punch them in the face and then tell them about Jesus. And they're quoting Bible verses out of context. And I'm with my son, try not to cry, with my son who's now 21. He was 19 at the time. And I look over at him and he's crying. He says, "Dad, why does the church do this? Why do they do this? Why do they have to find everything bad with everything? Why aren't they helping people? Why aren't they having conversations? If they really care about these kids, why aren't they doing something?" I can't stand this. I can't stand this. So I go up to this guy with the megaphone and I say, "Hey man, do you have a Bible I could use?" He says, "Why do you want a Bible?" This was his first reaction to me. I said, "Well, you've got a bunch of Bible verses printed around here. I want to see if I can find some of them. I'm just curious." And he says, "Well, here." And he takes a little pocket Bible out and he hands it to me and he says, "Just make sure you give it back to me, all right?" This is the voice for the church at Lollapalooza. As I'm sitting there, I'm reading the Bible and I look over and there's this little girl to me, teenager. She walks over to me and she says, "I'm sorry, can I interrupt for a second?" I said, "Yeah." She puts her arm around me and she whispers in my ear. She says, "I just wanted to tell you that Jesus isn't like this." And I said, "Sweetheart, you have more guts than any of these people combined in this place to walk up to a 40-something-year-old guy with a freaky beard, tats and earrings. You don't know who I am, but you saw me being yelled at and you came and whispered that kind of hope in my ear? We need you. The church needs you. We need to be hope whisperers, like the little girl outside of Lollapalooza in social networking. That's our job. What stories are you sharing in social networking? Good ones? Or have we just jumped on the bandwagon where everything's at risk, we're afraid of everything, we don't want to have anything to do with it? Are we inviting the stranger into conversation? No, there's some real risks. There's some real risks in social networking, but they're the same kind of risks that you and I have every single day. Relationally, there's big relationship risks in social networking, but relationships are risky, and it's our job as believers, as followers of Jesus, to interact with people, to invite the stranger in, to converse with them, to build bridges. It's a new language, but I'm afraid that the church is too caught up in a cyberbullying of its own. We talk about kids being involved in bullying people on the internet. I think adults are worse. I think the church is horrible at cyberbullying. My friend Dave met a guy, Joe, at a conference. They had a great conversation, exchanged their social networking kind of information with one another. Within 2 days, the guy he met at the conference was just bashing him. He went to our website. He was reading some things we said. He just wanted to pick a fight. He just went, seriously? Is this what we're going to do in social networking? We're going to fight with one another? We're going to try to one-up one another? Where did we start thinking that it's our job as the church to correct every wrong in 140 characters or less? Who gave us that permission? Just to fight. Rob Bell comes out with a new book, right? Love Wins. Not everybody agrees with Rob. Rob got death threats after writing that book. Through Twitter, through Facebook, through email. Listen, you can disagree. We can disagree well in the provincial life, in the church lobby, in the passing period, in the prayer chain. We can disagree, but I think we ought to ask these questions. I'm going to give you some questions, and you can write these down here. When I'm speaking in social networking platforms, when it comes to conflict resolution, when it comes to disagreement, do I think someone is going to be hurt unless I challenge them? Like, because this person says this, is it going to cause a world of hurt? Maybe that's a reason that we interact. Maybe not. Because conflict resolution is not for social networking. But ask yourself, if I don't challenge them, is somebody going to get hurt? Can I disagree in a way that doesn't drag the name of Jesus through the mud? Ask yourself that question before you spout your opinion. Do I really hold this opinion, or am I jumping on the bandwagon? A la Rob Bell, Love Wins. Yeah, let's hate Rob Bell, kill the beast. There is a hell. Like, seriously? We want to play that card in social networking? Will my contrary opinion help someone, or might it do more harm? Can I state my opinion in a non-aggressive manner? Do I have this person's best interest at heart? Do I just want to win an argument? Do I make myself look good by disagreeing? And is this the motivation? And is it prideful? Am I ready for a fight? And then maybe this one is the one that should be the guiding one. Did this person even ask for my opinion? And am I in relationship with them? I got a Facebook message along with 4 other people yesterday about what a horrible pastor I was. What's it?
With the love of Christ.
Yeah, I mean, in Jesus' name, amen. God bless his cold black heart. Now, there's things I can learn. I can be a better pastor. oh my goodness. But this guy was way, way, way out of line. And he included 4 other people in the conversation. He thought they were bad too. Conflict resolution in a social networking platform forces you to go on the defense in front of the entire world. It's the World Wide Web. Rob Bell, sure, he wrote a book and he's just a pastor up in Grand Rapids, right? No, guy's got kids. His kids read that stuff. His family, his friends. It's ridiculous. I called this guy who said mean things to me, and I asked if it would be possible to set up a one-on-one with him, face-to-face. Because social networking shouldn't be vilified, but it's certainly not the place for us to fight. I think that there's levels of communication for conflict resolution, and I think this is probably the biggest thing. This is my big soapbox with social networking today, and so I want to spend just a few minutes to talk about this. I think the number one, the best place that we can do conflict resolution is face-to-face. Because are people going to believe your verbal communication or your nonverbal communication more? They're going to believe your nonverbal communication more, right? So we make it easier on ourselves, and we help them to understand us better when we're face-to-face. Now, there's still room for error, but it goes down from there. Phone call, there's more room for error than face-to-face. A letter, handwritten, more. Email, social networking, text, it's the worst possible way that you can do conflict resolution. Anybody want to throw into that? Anybody want to say anything at this point about that? No? Nothing?
I'll text it to you later.
What'd you say?
I said I'll text it to you later.
Oh, I love you.
I think far too often we try and just we get too we blow things out of proportion just because of what it comes down to is a disagreement of opinion. Like, a lot of times we find something where we don't agree with someone, but that doesn't immediately mean that they're wrong. I've got a good friend, we disagree on a lot of stuff, but I don't believe he's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just said, the best conversations happen face to face. With texting, Facebook, you can't hear tone of voice, you can't detect sarcasm, none of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's horrible. Anybody else been affected by that?
I'm curious about how many people have been involved in a breakup that happened on social media. Anybody?
Oh, I mean, I haven't, but
I'm not saying you did it to somebody. I'm just saying
Oh.
you were involved in a breakup, and whoever was doing it or not doing it, the message was conveyed over social media.
Well, I have a family member that was found out that his wife was going to divorce him because he changed her relationship status from married to single on Facebook and changed her married name back to her maiden name.
I had a friend just leave her husband by text. Anybody else want to throw into that? We know why the fear exists. Because we see crap like this happen every day. But if I have anything to say about it, if I can help at all for the church, I want to be a voice that says, look, people communicate different now. And you're either going to get swallowed up by this tidal wave of new communication, and you're no longer going to know how to communicate with anybody anymore. And you're no longer going to be able to share anything of value or worth any longer. And you're not going to be able to talk with people about Jesus in the way that other people are talking about him. You're either going to be crushed under that, or you're going to learn about it, and you're going to embrace it, and you're going to understand that that language has changed. It's just as important as being in another country where you have to be bilingual. Living in a country where you have to learn how to speak Spanish. I went to the Czech Republic when I was in my 20s, and there was this little joke. The jokes were always funny to me. Funny in the sense that they weren't as funny to me as they were to them, so it made it even more funny. And I remember the one that stuck with me where this kid said, "Hey, what do you call somebody who speaks 3 languages?" And I said, "Multilingual." He said, "Right." "What do you call somebody who speaks 2 languages?" I said, "Bilingual." He said, "Right." "What do you call somebody who speaks 1 language?" "American." American was his answer. It was the funniest thing in the world to him. Oh my goodness. But I like to think of that joke for us as the church too. I think that the church in many cases only speaks one language. It's a language maybe that they learned, they grew up with. It's a flip chart Jesus kind of a presentation. It's a seal the deal kind of a presentation of Jesus. It's an argumentative kind of a language with people. But if we're going to exist in this world, if social networking is a prayer chain, then it presents for us daily opportunities for us as Jesus followers to learn about how to meet people's needs. About how to pray for them, about how to let them know that there are people praying for them, about letting them know that there are people that care. And if social networking is a passing period, then we have an opportunity in that time between classes on the way to something else to squash rumors, to dispel fears, to spread cheer throughout the hallways, and to invite people into conversation. We have a few moments to celebrate life in the hallway with people when we're on the way to something else. And if social networking is the provincial life, then we have an opportunity to become the town storyteller, right? To tell the good stories, to try to provide a counterbalance to what the mainstream media is out there saying about the world that we live in and about social networking in particular. And if we live in the world of the church lobby, if social networking is a church lobby, then we have just a few minutes to influence people, not to win an argument, not to fight for attention, not to be pissy, but to give people tools to deliver good news, to listen to them, to interact with them, to invite more conversation with them, and to begin to foster relationships. Sure, social networking isn't where the deep, deep, deep relationship happens, but do not write it off. It is a springboard, it is a launching pad into some of the most rich relationship if you look at it in those ways. And if you understand that you have a role as a follower of Jesus to learn a new language and to practice that language, right? You guys have any questions in the next couple of minutes? Yes.
I do. Okay, so what do you suggest you do when you see on Facebook somebody, like a Christian, who is saying something like so retarded that you just want to punch in the face?
Right.
Virtually. You know, and I could totally, I lost friends over the Rob Bell book. You know, I lost friends who, before it was released, were saying terrible things about me. I've been to his church and I love his church and I love hearing him and I love his book.
Sure.
And me saying to them, I don't think you should, I don't think you should be saying personal, attacks on somebody.
Right.
And I don't think you should be saying anything about this person before his book is released and you've read it.
Right.
And then it just went bleh from there, where you're just being personally attacked. So how do you say something as a follower of Christ without being a part of the argument?
Well, I think it all gets down to relationship. So the first question I ask is, how well do I know this person? So if I know them super well, depending on what they say, sometimes I will respond in a social networking platform, but only when I know them super well, and I know I can say something sarcastic to lighten the mood, or I can poke fun, and we're gonna banter back and forth, and I know it's gonna be playful, and so maybe I do that, but I have to be in such great relationship to do that with them. If I'm not in a relationship, I stop right there. I go, if they're just an acquaintance, I do not enter that argument in social networking platforms, because I'm not going to win, and I'm just going to be another voice that just sounds stupid.
Yes.
And I am going to say something that I wish I could take back. I promise you, because it's so easy. I mean, email is easy enough. It's so easy in social networking to feel it melting up and send, boom, sucker, got you, right? So I just stay out of it. So if I say I'm not in a great relationship, but I do have some kind of a relationship, then I call that person and say, hey, can we talk? And I don't do one of those, hey, I'd really like to take you to lunch and talk to you. Right, and leave it just open for interpretation. I get right to the point. Say, Jack, listen, man, I know we're not the best of buddies, but I want to go out to lunch with you, and I want to talk about this because we are Facebook friends, and you are saying something, and you do go to my church, and I want to be in a relationship with you for a long time. But honestly, I'm a little ticked right now. If I'm honest, and I don't like that feeling. I want us to be able to see each other in the store and not have me go over to aisle 6 when I see you coming down to aisle 3. You're important to me, right? Our relationship is important. Can we get together? I tell him exactly what I want to talk about. And if he says, if he wants to argue it on the phone, I say, look, it's not the best place, right? Like social networking, bad conflict resolution. Telephone, better, but not the best. We need to get together and talk about this. And then I also ask myself the question, really, is it worth it? Are they saying something that's just going to fade away? Were they just being stupid? Do they wish they could take it back? Is it even worth talking about? If it's one of those kind of things, it'll just be passing for me. I'll just see Jack and say, dude, what was going on the internet today? Like my friend who ranted about Walmart and how he hated it the other week. And it was like, seriously, 57 comments about, and they ended up calling each other communist and Hitler by the end of it. It was about Walmart. I go, really? I'm not going to get involved in this. But when I saw that guy at church, I said, seriously, man, Walmart? He's like, yeah, I wish I could take that whole thing down. I go, guess what? You can. You should go home and take it down. Yeah, I know. My wife said, Pastor John is going to see this. I said, don't worry about Pastor John. Worry about the thousands of other people. What are you talking about? You want to get together and talk about it? Yeah, man, I have problems. Right? Right? So it's all about relationship. How well do I know them? How are they going to respond? Have they invited me in? Do I have permission to speak in this? Is it even going to help? You guys are awesome. Thanks for hanging out.